Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. This presentation is brought to you by Mati-Ullah-Khattak. Our topic is The Merchant of Venice, a play which is written by William Shakespeare. We have certain objectives to achieve through this lesson, so keep these objectives in mind while listening to the video lecture. In our previous lecture, we learned that Portia took the agreement paper from Shylock and looked at it for a while. After looking at the agreement paper, Portia said to Shylock that according to this bond, you have got the right to cut a pound of flesh from his body. I mean to say, from Antonio's body. But it would be better to show mercy to him. To which Shylock replied that there is no power in the tongue of a man to change his mind. So let me cut off a pound of flesh from his body. And at the same time, we noticed that he was sharpening a long knife to get it ready for the action ahead. So let us see what happens next in the court or the Senate House before the Duke of Venice. So, with great eagerness to cut off the pound of flesh, Portia said to Antonio, have you anything to say? Antonio, with a calm resignation, replied, resignation means willingness, acceptance. Eagerness means keenness, great interest. So Antonio, with a calm resignation, he replied with the due acceptance, willingness that he had but little to say. For that he had prepared his mind for death. Then he said to Bassanio, give me your hand, Bassanio. Fare you well. Grieve not that I am fallen into this misfortune for you. Commend me to your honorable wife. And so commend means, students, commend means praise me, give my compliments, approve of me to your honorable wife, and tell her how I have loved you. Bassanio in the deepest affliction. So affliction means extreme pain and suffering. Replied, Antonio, I'm married to a wife who is as dear to me as life itself. But life itself, my wife, and all the world are not esteemed with me above your life. So esteemed means great respect. I would lose all. I would sacrifice all to this devil here to deliver you. Deliver means to give you freedom. Portia was hearing this, though the kind hearted lady was not at all offended with her husband for expressing the love he owed to so true a friend. Out means he expressed to so true a friend as Antonio. It means that Portia did not say anything, even though she was hearing, she was listening what he was telling in front of her, that I would like to sacrifice everything for my friend Antonio. Even I am ready to sacrifice my life, which is my wife, I'm even ready to sacrifice that for my friend. But Portia was hearing all this silently. She didn't say anything. She didn't lose her temper. She didn't show any anger, and that's what the writer want to say. Because Antonio was a good friend of Bassanio, and Antonio in these strong terms. So he urged so true a friend as Antonio in these strong terms. It would not help answering. Your wife would give you little things if she were present to hear you make this offer. What the writer mean to say over here? It would not help answer, but she could not stop herself from answering Bassanio when he was expressing in this way his love for his friend Antonio. Portia could not stop herself and she said to Bassanio, if your wife had been here, she would be little thankful to you for such an expression of love to your friend. And then Cristiano, who loved to copy what his Lord did. Who was his Lord? Bassanio was his Lord, his master. Lord means his master. So Bassanio, Antonio Cristiano was in the habit to copy, to follow his master. What his master used to do, he used to do the same thing. So he must make a speech like Bassanio, and he was supposed to make a speech like Bassanio, and he said in Neresa's hearing. So Neresa was hearing, she was listening what Grishano was saying, who was writing in her clerk's dress, and she was busy in writing something, and she was wearing the dress of a clerk by the side of Portia. Now this is the speech which is made by Grishano. I have a wife whom I protest I love. I protest I I do not love. I protest. I do not love. I wish she were in heaven. So he has expressed his wish that she should have died until now, so that she were in heaven, and there she could entreat some power, and there she could request some power, that is God, there to change the cruel temper of this curious Jew. Curious Jew means this dog like Jew. So he went a bit ahead of Bassanio and expressing his love for Antonio, and he told in the presence of Neresa, that I wish that she should have died by now, and she should have been there in the heaven in order to request some powers in heaven to change the mind of this, to change the temper, to change the temperament, to change the cruel mind of this dog like Jew. It is well you wish this behind her back. So, this is what is the response given by Neresa. Neresa uh, tells tells him that it is well, it is good you wish, you are expressing this wish in the absence of your wife, behind her back, in the absence of her wife, your wife. Else, otherwise, you would have but an unquiet house, said Neresa. Unquiet house, there would have been quite a lot of quarrel in your house. Otherwise, you would have but an unquiet house. There would have been a lot of quarrel in your noise in your house. Shylock now cried out impatiently. So he was impatient, he was eager. He cried in a loud voice, why trifle time? Why are you wasting this time? So unnecessarily wasting time is why trifle time? I pray pronounce the sentence. I request you to announce the punishment. Sentence here means punishment. And now all was awful expectation in the court. and every heart was full of and every heart was full of grief for Antonio. So now let us see the difficult words and explanation. So the first sentence of this paragraph shows that Shylock is extremely eager. He is keen. He has great interest uh, to cut off a pound of flesh from Antonio's body. And Portia now says to Antonio, "Have you anything to say? Do you have any desire to express?" Which usually happens in the court if somebody is going to be hanged. He is given last chance to express his last desire. So the same thing happens here that Portia said to asked Antonio, "Do you have any desire to express at this final moment of your life?" And Antonio replied that I am ready to die. Calm resignation. Resignation means willingness, acceptance, readiness. And he quietly replied that I am willing to die. Calm resignation simply means, in a very calmful manner, he said that I am ready to die. I have nothing to say, and I have prepared my and I have got I have prepared my mind for death. And then he hold the hand of Bassanio and said to him, goodbye. And then he tried to pacify him. Grieve not. You should not feel guilty that I have fallen into this bad situation because of you. Say my compliments to your honorable wife and tell her how much love I had for you. Now, Bassanio was in the extreme sort of pain and difficult situation, affliction, and he expressed his love for Antonio in these words. He said to Antonio that I am married to a wife who is as dear to me as my life itself. She is as dear to me as my life. But life itself, my wife, though she is my wife and life, I would like to sacrifice that for you because you are more honorable for me, respectable for me than everything in my life. I would lose all, I would sacrifice to this devil here to deliver you, but I would like to get you free from this devilish person. Now, Portia was hearing this as I told you in the start, but she controlled her, you can say her anger and her emotion. She did not say anything good to Bassanio because it was good for Bassanio to express his love for such a good friend in these strong terms. Yet she could not stop being a woman, being a wife. She could not stop herself from answering, and she said, "If your wife had been here, she would be little thankful to you for such an expression in her presence." And then Grishano, it comes Grishano turns, and he expresses his love for Antonio in these strong words, terms, that I would have liked my wife to have died, and she should have been there in the heaven to get some relaxation for our friend from this dog-like Jew. It is well, and then Neresa said to him, "It is good that your wife is not present here, otherwise, you would have a very quarrelsome house. There would have been a lot of noise in your house." And all this made the Jew very impatient, and he said in a very loud voice that I would like the Duke to announce the punishment. And now all was awful expectation in the court. Now everyone was expecting something terrible to happen. Awful means very unpleasant, terrible. All was awful expectation in the court. In the court, everyone was expecting something terrible to happen, and every heart was full of grief for Antonio. And there was a lot of grief in everybody's heart for the sake of Antonio. So Portia asked if the scales were ready to weigh the flesh, and she said to the Jew, Shylock, you must have some surgeon by, lest he bleeds to death. Shylock, whose whole intent was that Antonio should bleed to death, said it is not so named in the bond. Portia replied, it is not so named in the bond, but what of that? It were good you did so much charity. To this all, the answer Shylock would make was, I cannot find it. It is not in the bond. Then said Portia, a pound of Antonio's flesh is fine. The law allows it, and the court awards it, and you may cut this flesh from uh, off his breast. The law allows it, and the court awards it. Again Shylock exclaimed, Oh, wise and upright judge, Daniel is come to judgment. And then he sharpened his long knife again, and looking eagerly on Antonio, he said, Come, prepare, tarry a little, Jew. Tarry means stop a little, stay a little. You Jew, said Portia, there is something else. This bond gives you no drop of blood. So it was not written in the bond that he could shed a blood from his body. It was only written in the bond that you have the right that you will cut off a pound of flesh from his body. But it was not written in the bond that he could shed a drop of blood from his body. So this was the very discovery which was made by Portia, and this saved the life of Antonio. The words expressly are, clearly are a pound of flesh. If in the cutting of the pound of flesh you shed one drop of Christian blood, your land and goods are by the law to be confiscated. Confiscated means take something away. Take something away is a punishment to the state of Venice. So everything that belongs to you will go to the state of Venice, will be taken hold of by the state of Venice. Now, as it was utterly impossible, it was extremely impossible for Shylock to cut off the pound of flesh without shedding some of Antonio's blood. So it was not possible for Antonio, for Shylock to cut off a pound of flesh without bleeding, without bleeding any drop of blood. So let us see the important point. So now you will see that the whole situation changes. Before this, we noticed that everything was going against Antonio, and we noticed that he was about to die because he was going, Shylock was going to cut off a pound of flesh from his body, and he said to him, Come, prepare, get ready your chest for this long knife or this sharp knife. But suddenly, this discovery was made by Portia, and she said to him that you stop a little. It is written in the bond that you have the right to cut off a pound of flesh, but you cannot shed you cannot shed a drop of his blood. If you shed a drop of his blood, it would mean that you had conspired against an innocent Christian blood. So, when she was standing in front of the Duke, she asked for a balance to be brought here in order to weigh the flesh, for scales to be to get ready to weigh the flesh. And she said to Shylock that you must have some surgeon by you, so that he should not bleed to death. Now Shylock, whose very intention was, whose whole interest was, intent means his interest was that Antonio should bleed to death. He should bleed to death. This was the whole thing he wanted. He said, "It is. This is the reply which is given by Shylock. that it is not so named in the bond. It means that we have not written anything, we have not recorded anything like surgeon in the bond. Portia replied, it is not so named in the bond. You are right that it is not written in the bond, but what of that? But what should we do of that? He should not bleed to death. It should not happen. So that's why she replied him, what of that? She asked him, what should be done for the bleeding? It were good you did so much charity. So it is once again, you are given an opportunity. You are provided with this opportunity to do so much to him to save his life. You have the right to cut off a pound of flesh from his body, but he should not bleed to death. You do so much good to him at least. To this, all the answer Shylock would make, and what replied he made was, I cannot find it. It is not possible for me to find a surgeon at this moment. It is not in the bond because we have not written it in the bond. So then said Portia to him, a pound of flesh is thine. You have the right. You are you have got this right to cut off a pound of flesh from his body as thine as your. This is old English. As your, and the court allows you, the law gives you this permission, and the court gives you this permission, and you may cut off a pound of flesh from his breast. The law allows you and the court awards you. Again Shylock exclaimed. So when Shylock heard Portia speaking in his favor once again, he exclaimed, he shouted in a loud voice, that voice that a very wise, a very man of wisdom has come to decide the case. A very wise man has come to decide the case. Daniel has come to this judgment. And then sharpened his long knife again, and he started sharpening his long knife again and looking eagerly, and he was keenly and a very earnest, in a very keen eyes he was looking at Antonio, and said to him once again, get ready and be prepared for the pound of flesh to be cut off from your chest. But now Portia said to him that you should stop a little. There is something else. The bond here gives you no drop of blood. So this is the discovery which is made by Portia. This wise discovery that you cannot shed a drop of blood of his from his body. And these words are clearly written over here, that you can expressly means clearly written over here that you can cut a pound of flesh and nothing else. If in the cutting of the pound of flesh you shed one drop of Christian blood, even if you shed one drop, your land and goods by the law of to be confiscated to the state of Venice. So this is what I have already told you, that your land, your property, and everything that belongs to you, your goods mean everything that belongs to you, should be taken hold of. Confiscated means should be taken hold of by the state of Venice. Now, as it was utterly impossible, so it was impossible for Shylock to cut off the pound of flesh without shedding some of Antonio's blood. So it was not possible to cut off a pound of flesh and not shed a drop of blood. So this was the wise discovery of Portia, that it was flesh and not blood that was named in the bond. So this was the very timely and wise discovery which was made by Portia, that the flesh, not the blood, was named in the bond. You can and you have the right to cut a pound of flesh, but not shed a drop of blood. So saved the life of Antonio, and all admiring the wonderful sagacity of young counselor, who had so happily thought of this expedient. Plaudits resounded from every part of the Senate house, and Greciano explained in the words which Shylock had used. O wise and upright judge, mark, mark means see, give, you, give, Daniel is come to judgment. So Greciano repeated the same words which were used by Shylock when the situation were going in his favor. Now the situations are going against him. So now it is Greciano who spoke these words in a very loud and a wise and upright judge, a very man of wisdom has come to this judgment. Daniel is come to judgment. So let us see the important points. This was the discovery which saved the life, and all admiring the wonderful sagacity. Sagacity means his wisdom. Sagacity means wisdom. His wisdom was admired by everyone present in the Senate house of this young counselor. Everyone praised, everyone admired his wisdom. He who had so happily thought of this expedient. Expedient means this necessity, this thing that was so useful, this discovery which was so useful to save the life of an innocent Christian. So plaudits, there were praises, there were approvals, resounded, could be heard here and there in the whole house, from every part of the Senate house, and Cristiano explained in the words of as I told you. So this is the end of this lecture. Do write it in the comment box if you feel anything is difficult. Thank you very much.